In a quiet corner of an animal shelter, a sorrowful cat named Oliver lay curled up, his soft cries filling the air. He had been left behind, his family heartbroken but unable to keep him. What they didn't realize was just how deeply he was suffering. One night, Dr. Reynolds, a veterinarian at the shelter, was making his rounds when he noticed something unusual on Oliver's collar. Taking a closer look at the tag, his eyes widened in shock. "Oh my God," he murmured under his breath, quickly calling for his assistant. Hannah, another staff member at the shelter, rushed in. "What's wrong, doctor?" "Reynolds?" she asked, her gaze shifting between him and the sad-eyed feline. He hesitated before responding, his voice filled with uncertainty. "Are you sure the woman who brought him in said their last name was Wallace?" Hannah frowned, nodding. "Yes, she said her name was Margaret, and his name was Thomas. Why?" Dr. Reynolds' voice dropped to a whisper. "Because that's not the name on this tag. Before we dive deeper into this mystery, where are you watching from? Comment below and don't forget to subscribe to Timeless Stories to hear more incredible tales like this." Since his arrival at the shelter, Oliver had been inconsolable. Margaret Wallace, the widow of his previous owner, had brought him in, saying that Oliver only ever responded to Thomas. She explained that, despite their love for him, the family simply couldn't care for him any longer. "If we can, we will come back for him," she had said, dabbing at her tears before walking away. Dr. Reynolds placed Oliver into a kennel, watching as the cat curled up against the wall, his tiny body trembling. Grief in animals wasn't uncommon, but Oliver's sorrow ran deeper than anything Dr. Reynolds had seen before. It was as if the cat wasn't just mourning his owner, he was guarding something. Later that evening, unable to shake his curiosity, Dr. Reynolds decided to check on Oliver again. He found the feline hiding his face beneath his paws. Kneeling beside the kennel, Reynolds reached out gently. "Let's take this off, buddy," he whispered, attempting to remove the collar. But Oliver reacted instantly, letting out a piercing screech and retreating to the farthest corner of his space, his tail lashing in distress. Dr. Reynolds froze, startled. "Why won't you let me take it off?" he murmured. As he peered closer, he caught a glimpse of the tag's inscription. For a brief moment, confusion washed over him. "I must have seen it wrong," he reassured himself. But deep down, something felt off. Determined to earn Oliver's trust, Dr. Reynolds left the kennel, considering his next approach. Force wouldn't work, but patience might. He soon returned with a treat and a toy. "All right, let's try this again," he murmured, placing the treat near the entrance of the kennel before stepping back. Oliver hesitated but eventually inched forward, sniffing before taking the offering. "Encourage, Doctor." Reynolds spoke softly, telling the cat about his own pets. Slowly, Oliver's body relaxed. Taking another chance, Reynolds coaxed Oliver into lifting his head just enough to reveal the tag completely. His heart skipped a beat as he read the name engraved on it, a name that changed everything. "Hannah, can you come here for a second?" Dr. Reynolds called, urgency laced in his voice. Hannah rushed over, sensing something was wrong. "What is it?" she asked, eyeing Oliver, who was now curled up protectively around his collar. Reynolds pointed at the tag. "The name on here, it's not Thomas Wallace." Hannah's brow furrowed. "Then who?" She trailed off, suddenly understanding the implications. "I'll check the paperwork," she said quickly, hurrying away. As Reynolds waited, he studied Oliver. The cat's body language made it clear. This collar meant something significant to him. Trying to remove it would only cause distress. He sighed, closing the kennel carefully, but his mind wouldn't let go of the matter. Minutes later, Hannah returned with the shelter's records. The Wallace family's full names are Margaret Eleanor Wallace and Thomas Jonathan Wallace, she confirmed. "But if that's true, then why doesn't the tag match?" Dr. Reynolds frowned. Something wasn't adding up. Oliver had been in their care for 6 years, but based on his physical condition, he had to be at least 10. Where had he been before that? And why had someone erased his past? Determined to find answers, Reynolds decided to visit the Wallace household. After informing his staff, Reynolds drove to the Wallace estate. The house loomed before him, grand and elegant, but filled with an air of quiet loneliness. Knocking on the door, he waited. A woman answered, someone younger than Margaret. Hi, I'm here about Oliver, he explained. I need to speak with Margaret. The woman hesitated before shaking her head. My mother isn't home right now, but maybe I can help. Reynolds took a deep breath. Would you happen to have old family photos, specifically from 6 years ago? The woman, introducing herself as Eleanor, raised an eyebrow but invited him inside. That's an odd request, but let me see what I can find. As Eleanor disappeared upstairs, Reynolds scanned the room. A large painting of Thomas Wallace hung prominently, his gaze seemingly following him. Then his eyes landed on a framed photograph on a nearby table. Thomas, Margaret, and Oliver. In the photo, Oliver was nestled between them, looking content. But something about the collar stood out. Reynolds leaned in, his pulse quickening. The name on the tag in the picture was clearer than in real life, and it wasn't Thomas's name at all. When Eleanor returned, she handed him an old album. As they flipped through, one image in particular caught Reynolds' attention. It was an older photograph of Oliver wearing the same collar, but this time, the tag was still pristine. Has he always had this collar? Reynolds asked. Eleanor nodded. Yes, ever since my father found him. Reynolds' curiosity deepened. Do you remember who might have owned him before? Eleanor shook her head. No. My father just said he found him alone one day. Reynolds pointed to the name on the tag in the old photograph. This name, Emily Harrison. Do you recognize it? Eleanor's expression changed. I think that was the name of a woman my father once mentioned. A quick search online led Reynolds to an address. His heart pounded as he dialed the number. I believe I may have found your lost cat, he said carefully. There was silence on the other end before a trembling voice whispered, Oliver? Emily Harrison's drive to the shelter was filled with anxious anticipation. 6 years ago, she had lost Oliver during a move. She had searched everywhere, put up flyers, and never stopped hoping. When she arrived, Reynolds led her to Oliver's kennel. The cat, initially wary, yowled in protest. But then, something shifted. His ears perked, his eyes widened, and his tail flicked in recognition. Emily crouched, extending a hesitant hand. Oliver, she whispered. A beat passed. Then with a soft purr, Oliver stepped forward, rubbing against her hand. Tears welled in Emily's eyes as she stroked his fur. I thought I lost you forever. As they embraced, Margaret Wallace entered, her expression unreadable. But instead of anger, there was understanding. He's always had two families, hasn't he? Margaret said softly. Emily smiled through her tears. Yes, he has. And so a decision was made. Oliver would have two homes, two families, and all the love he had ever known. Did this story touch your heart? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed it, like this video and subscribe to Timeless Stories for more amazing tales.